late. We had a quorum issue and a technology issue. I'd respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself unless you're recognized to speak. For all of you virtually assembled, please be aware that the Performance Committee will commence after this meeting adjourns. Please note that committee meetings, RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meeting, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. During today's meeting, we are also providing communication access real-time translation known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated for anyone who would like to access the live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. A live stream of the meeting is also available on RTD's YouTube page. I'd like to call the roll for committee members. First, Chair Harwick.
I'm here.
Second Vice Chair Guchenritter. He was going to be late. He did send me a note. He'll be joining in a little bit. Secretary Nicholson.
I'm here.
Treasurer Banker.
Present.
And I am here. I also note that Director Guzman is Director Chandler, and I think that is it for other members that are attending. I'd like to open the public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you'd like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Is there anybody, Mr. Kroll, with their hands raised to be recognized?
Chair O'Keefe, this is Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. I do not see anyone present who has their hand raised, and there were no written public comments submitted in advance of this meeting. I will also note that I believe Director Larson is with us.
Oh, thank you. Still looking for him. Yeah, I'm not seeing Director Larson on my screen, so I'll take your word for it. With no participants for public comment, we'll close the public comment period at this time. There's one recommended action on the agenda this afternoon, and that action is regarding House Bill 26-1065 for a board position. It's for the board of directors to approve taking a support position regarding this bill related to transit and housing investment zones. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Banker is the mover and Harwick as the second. I would like to ask Government Relations Officer Michael Davies to present this item to the committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair and members of the committee. As noted, this is a recommended board action to take a support position on House Bill 26-1065 Transit and Housing Investment Zones. As many of you know, we discuss bills and legislation regularly with liaisons from the board. That is Secretary Nicholson and Director Geisinger on a regular basis. This was one of the bills that we have discussed over the last couple of weeks. And hopefully you all had an opportunity to see the bill, which was the attachment to this board report, and read the discussion item. At a high level, this really creates a financing tool for cities to then partner with transit agencies on potential projects to improve facilities around transit stations. And that's it's really a form of tax increment financing, different in a way from tax increment financing that was used on Denver Union Station. That was really based more on property tax. This is tax increment financing using sales tax. A couple things to note in there. that does not have a direct operational or financial impact on the agency. It really is just a tool in the toolbox for cities to consider using. Important to understand what this bill is not. It is not direct money that comes to RTD as a result of this. It really takes a city to initiate a process. And if a transit agency then wants to partner with that city, that's a secondary process to it. It really is the lead of the city to initiate this process if one of these applications in a potential project is to be considered. Another thing to note, if a transit agency is a part of one of the applications and agrees to be a part of the process with the city, and that is approved then by the state economic development board that oversees this process, the transit agency would get to appoint one vote to that authority overseeing this potential project. A couple other things to note that there's a maximum of 3 projects per year and 6 projects total allowed under this entire process. So that is to note that this is a little bit of a pilot project for the state to move forward with, and with that they did put some parameters around how many of these projects can go forward. And then also note that no more than $75 million per fiscal year can be dedicated to a project. So again, just noting that there are some parameters around these potential projects and the use of the potential financing tool. Lastly, the bill does also authorize 50 million in tax credits through calendar year 2033 that can be used on low and middle income housing projects located in the transit investment zones. And that transit investment zone is part of the process of a city designating one of these projects and moving forward with an application. So with that, I'll stop there and see if there's any questions from the committee. Thank you.
I have a question, but I will go last. Treasurer Banker.
Okay, great. Here, I was just trying to pull up the fiscal note. Michael, I understand they're talking about a $75 million appropriation. It has not yet gone to the Appropriations Committee, correct? Do you think the appropriation is going to stick?
Chair, if I may.
Mr. Davies, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Director Banker. Yeah, I couldn't exactly say. I mean, obviously, the $75 million appropriation really is if this project is used by a city. So it's not a guaranteed appropriation that has to happen. I mean, there's many steps that take
Right.
The state to get to the point where a potential appropriation of that money actually then goes out. But by all means, I think the state fiscal analysts do a pretty good job of putting together the fiscal notes, and I wouldn't expect there to be any big changes with that fiscal note. But as you noted, it has not gone to the Appropriations Committee yet, and I believe is actually being heard in its first committee early next week.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all, Treasurer Banker? Looks like it. Director Chandler, I'll let you go. I'll still go last.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Even though I'm not part of this committee, I appreciate the ability to ask a question. Mr. Davies, since this is a TIF, a temporary incremental or tax incremental financing, it's not subject to a vote of the people of that community because it's a separate than the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. So there is no ability for the community to actually vote on this. Is it all going to be decided by the city council or whoever the entity is that's going to be part of that decision making?
Mr. Davies?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Director Chandler. Great question. There are a few other approval points in this, but you are correct. It is not a part of a public vote process. It takes the city to go ahead and undertake a potential development of an application. So depending, it doesn't require a city council in the legislation, but it does require a city assuming that a city council wanted to be a part of that and kind of directs their city to say, come to city council with whatever development you're in, that is certainly a potential for a city council to be involved in the approval of an initial application and development of one of these projects. After that, and after the city has really done their due diligence, come up with all of the parameters of a potential project, and there are a lot of requirements that need to go into one of these potential projects that a city would have to undertake. Once all that happens, you really then can approach a transit agency, and the transit agency can become a part of the city's process on that. After, again, then that process, it then is an application submitted to the State Economic Development Office, and really a commission through the Economic Development Office is stood up, and that is the ultimate approval authority. So in many ways, it really is subject to the approval by the state and the members of the state's Economic Development Department that are listed in the bill. So those are essentially the approval processes that go into this. But you are correct, there's no public vote as a part of this process.
And my day job, I do a little work with these types of districts. It's also not, there's no new tax. It is only the increase in taxes that are collected. So it's not you're not moving from a 5% to 5.2%. It is all revenue above the baseline case goes to the project. So it's a little quirky. Did I see Audit Chair Guzman? You're okay. So my question, which I'm not, just something to flag, is if I look at something like Bellevue Station, which is in the city and county of Denver, barely, but for all intents and purposes, in Greenwood Village too. Like the median of the street is where it's decided, and I don't think there's a requirement for adjacency for any collaboration between the two governments. You could have Denver City Council take an action on Bellevue Station, and it would be impactful of what went on for Greenwood Village. And there's a few issues with that. One is traffic flow, that there's no need to account impacts on adjacent cities or jurisdictions. So this could have some unanticipated negative impacts to adjacent cities. And I'm not asking for an official position, but I'd like us to keep an eye on that, see if there's any ability to do that collaboration going forward. So more of a statement than a question. Director Harwick does not have his hand up. I have bad eyes today. Okay. Anybody else would like to be recognized regarding this topic? Okay. Are there going to be any no votes at this stage? No votes. Secretary Nicholson, I can't see you. I'm assuming you're not nodding your head. Yes, you have a yes or no.
I would let you know. I am a yes or no.
Okay. So with 4 aye votes and 0 no, I'm just looking real quick to make sure that Kuchenreder did not join. He didn't. The motion passes 4-0. In accordance with the outcome, the board office will make sure that this action item is placed in the appropriate section for on the board agenda for next Tuesday. Okay, directly after this meeting, the Performance Committee will consider one action item, the successor strategic plan consultancy, to help us concoct our revised strategic plan, or our update strategic plan. Based on the vote outcome of that action, assuming it passes, I'd like for the board office to adjust the board agenda as necessary to ensure that that item is then included in the board agenda. So our next item of business is to approve that agenda for the regular board meeting, and with the assumption that that might come in. So that's the one obvious thing that could change. Is there a motion to approve the regular board meeting agenda as amended for our meeting on Tuesday, February 24th? Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Okay, Mr. Harwick, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Anchor is a second. Okay. Before, oh, we haven't voted yet. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Before I open this up to discussion, I just want to remind the directors we have a fairly complicated day on Tuesday. And so I'm going to ask for everyone's patience as we try to get this schedule to work in flow. We're going to have a number of guests. And so we've also asked for the GMCEO to provide her update in written form as a presentation or document. That will probably be distributed on the day of. It would typically be given verbally, so we're asking for it to be written. We're going to give Ms. Johnson a little bit of time to pull that together, and we will distribute it on Tuesday, and of course, make sure that it is publicly available too. We're asking for committee chairs to also provide updates to the extent they have any this early in the year, also in written form, which will hopefully help our schedule. So we have that prior to the board meeting, we'll have a special board meeting to meet an executive session regarding negotiations on joint service. GMCEO Johnson has advised me that there will be an NDA required given the, non-disclosure agreement required by BNSF for their proprietary part of this discussion, this negotiation, and we will provide a summary of that before we get into executive session. Please know that will be required for that section. So we're going to also try to isolate as few staff as possible, so we're not NDAing a whole bunch of people for that. Then we'll have State Senators Matt Ball and Iman. Is it Jodai? I never know how to. Someone help me with pronunciation. Jodai.
Judah.
Judah. It's a U. Okay, there you go. Okay, in attendance to hear feedback from us on the RTD Accountability Committee report, and we'd also like to hear what their initial thinking is with respect to the forthcoming legislation, content, schedule. They're still very much in a gathering mode on information. So I did want to thank them, and I'll thank them profusely for offering to come and talk to the board. They did that on their own. That's how important they take this. And so welcome their attendance. Per resolution of the board last year, we'll be hearing an update from management on our options to expand service to high volume events. We are also scheduled to have a follow-up conversation to our discussion last month on fairs. I'm proposing that we postpone that given all the items that we already have on, and do that in March. And then we also, following the board meeting, we're likely to have a performance committee meeting, much like earlier this week, that will be in executive session to discuss the timeline on our CEO contract resolution, which everyone knows is coming to term next year. So with that very detailed framing laid out, is there any discussion, questions, clarifications? Okay. Oh, Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, thank you. This is Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. I believe that the chair has proposed to postpone the conversation on the fair study session and follow-up. And since you all will vote to approve this, I just want to make sure no one is opposed to that. And as long as no one is opposed, we will revise the agenda accordingly.
Good over here.
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna take the win. So are there any no votes on adopting the agenda for next week's board meeting? I am seeing none. I also do not see Chris Kuchenritter on the call yet. So that is 4 aye votes and 0 no votes, no abstentions, and passes. There are 4 discussion items on today's agenda. The first item is monthly government relations report. from Michael Davies, our Chief Government Relations Officer. And would you please present the item?
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Michael Davies, Government Relations Officer. Have a brief report for you on federal items. As noted at the end of January during the last committee meeting, Congress was really getting to the point of getting to a negotiation on passing a full year appropriation bill that covers USDOT grant programs. That was approved by Congress, and funding is now appropriated through September 30th, 2026, the federal fiscal year. That bill fully funded transit formula grants. And that's just good news for RTD and good news that Congress is working in a more regular order where appropriations bills are matching the authorized number for transit funding. So the focus really, now that appropriations has ended for the current fiscal year, we'll really be working and looking toward appropriations process starting for the next fiscal year, beginning October 1st, 2026. No bills have been introduced yet, and no real committees of jurisdiction have started their process in Congress, but we'll be following that very closely. Also, with regards to federal reauthorization, that is really the thing that I think all of us are in the transit world are watching Congress at this point. Committees of jurisdiction and the chairs and ranking members of those committees have still continued to say, we are going to introduce a bill this year. We're going to move forward with the reauthorization process. I do want to note, and Director Banker has raised concerns with some media reports and some comments that were raised last year, and I brought this up in this committee at the end of last year when those media reports were out, that there was some documents transmitted from USDOT to the Office of Management and Budget that suggested that the administration would like to see that transit or the mass transit account is removed from the Highway Trust Fund. That is the Highway Trust Fund is what really funds all of the transit formula grants. So that would be detrimental. The good news, and as I noted at the end of last year, was both the ranking member and the minority member of the committees of jurisdiction in both House and Senate really threw cold water on that suggestion right out of the gate and said that that's basically a non-starter for them. Doesn't mean it can't happen, and it doesn't mean we all shouldn't take those concerns and media reports seriously. So we have continued to communicate with our congressional delegation. And beyond that, we've certainly communicated with our local jurisdictions that are also raising this issue. For example, I know the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition, as well as the Adams County Mayors and Commissioners, did sign on to a letter that really said it is a priority, in that letter going to our congressional delegation, really saying that it is a priority to keep the mass transit account in the Highway Trust Fund and maintain funding in the reauthorization bill. So, and I do know that Director Nicholson is engaged on behalf of Director Banker with our lobbyist to kind of ask that question as well. But absolutely happy to continue to track this closely and provide any other further information or concerns with regards to those media reports suggesting that transit be removed from the Highway Trust Fund. Moving to state matters.
Mr. Davies, I think GMCO Johnson had something to add on that topic, just real quick.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Davies. Just wanted to supplement what's taking place right now as well is that the American Public Transportation Association's Board of Directors is holding a meeting, and they are voting on APTA's surface transportation authorization recommendations. It's gone through APTA's Legislative Steering Committee as well as the Executive Committee of APTA and the Board of Directors, and it amplifies further what Mr. Davies talked about. There has been communication and coordination with the ranking and minority member of the respective houses to which Mr. Davies referenced, and I just wanted to further amplify that. This has been something that has been ongoing, and I can say that I personally have been engaged and shared that I would be missing that meeting because this is my obligation here, but thought it was germane for all of you to share. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Davies, please continue.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to state matters. Really, a lot of the effort is on tracking and monitoring all of the bills at the state level being introduced. Of course, you all just took a position with regards to 1065. But we are getting to that point where the bills are starting to slow, and all of the bills, besides a few special bills that we know will be late bills and come out, including the potential bill with regards to RTD board reform, will still come out in the process. But many of the other bills that were previously planned and drafted are largely introduced and will start going through the committee process at this point. So a lot of RTD's staff effort and effort with our lobbyists have been just to review and monitor and run all of those bills that may have a potential impact and run those through the process that we have here at the agency. I do want to mention a bill, and we've discussed this with Secretary Nicholson and Director Geisinger. This would be House Bill 261101, and it's called the Criminal Offenses Related to Critical Infrastructure Metals. This bill has been introduced, and we do plan to bring it forward for consideration for a potential position from the board. But overall, this does have a operational and a financial impact to the agency. And what this does is put a process and some criminal penalties around the sale of critical metals. So if, for example, copper wire was stolen from critical infrastructure, if you all recall, there was a bill a couple years ago that put a process around stolen catalytic converters, and really putting the onus a little bit on the buyer and the seller of the catalytic converter. They look to kind of mimic that same process with the stolen metals that come from other critical infrastructure. Transportation infrastructure is absolutely included in that bill, and certainly it might be a good process and a deterrence measure to buying and accepting stolen metals, and put a little bit more of a process around holding folks accountable that may purchase stolen metals from an individual. Lastly, just moving on to the local level, continue to really set up local engagements. I know Jen Webster has worked with a lot of the board members and continue to explore opportunities to engage with local municipal levels. I just want to note a couple of them. On January 22nd, Director Whitmore and myself participated in the North Area Transportation Alliance meeting. On January 24th, myself, Jen Webster, Chair O'Keefe, Secretary Nicholson all participated in the Metro Mayor's Caucus Retreat. And that was a great event and a great opportunity to address all of the mayors there. And then just lastly, on February 4th, Director Guzman, Deputy CEO Pena, CFO Mackey, and myself participated in a Denver City Council Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And that's always a great opportunity, which is generally held on about a quarterly basis with the Denver City Council, and great opportunity to engage them and answer questions. So with that, I will end my report and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions, concerns, any discussion? I'm going to go just real quick with Treasurer Banker. I'll come right back to you, Director Guzman.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davies. You probably know I am interested in trying to make sure that we keep up to date as much as possible with regard to the federal reauthorization bills that are going to be coming out soon. And so one of my questions is, I know you make a report here to the executive committee, and maybe this is more of a question for our chair. I think this is so important because so many things are going to be decided this year by Congress, hopefully by Congress, right? That perhaps the whole board should be briefed on these things and not just the executive committee. And I'm also wondering whether or not we should have a short report from you during the finance committee meetings, because as you know, once the bills are introduced and they start making amendments and all that, things might happen quickly. You never know. And I just want to make sure that our board, our full board, is apprised as to what's going on. And And I just want to make sure we're going to get continuous up-to-date information on what's going on with reauthorization. And then one other point that I was thinking about over the past couple of days, in the past, we used to have our lobbyists come and speak to the board and make a presentation, usually just once a year, both on the state and federal lobbyists. And I'd just like to maybe put that out, that might be something we would like to see, again, once a year, see who they are, let them see who we are, and make that kind of connection. While I know we get good information from Mr. Davies, so I don't take it, incorrectly here. I just think it would be also good for us to see our lobbyists and lobbyists to see us. So just something to put out there for thought. So thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Treasurer Banker. We'll take that discussion idea offline and report back. Audit Chair Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious about the House Bill. You said 1101 was the number, I believe. If you know who's sponsoring that bill and working on it, just out of curiosity.
Mr. Davies.
Yes, thank you, Director Guzman. Yes, that is House Bill 261101. I know Representative Espinoza has really taken the lead on that. I don't recall off the top of my head the other prime sponsors on that, but I know Representative Espinoza has been the primary sponsor.
Okay, thank you. Treasurer Banker, did I see your hand go up again, or was it just a remnant? Okay. There's no other discussion. Thank you, Mr. Davies, for the update. Our second item is public comment data and practices review. Ask First Vice Chair Harwick and Director Guzman and Board Office Executive Manager Mr. Kroll to present this item.
Chair O'Keefe, I had the opportunity to connect with First Vice Chair Harwick and Director Guzman, the newly minted Audit Committee Chair, as you noted, yesterday, and they asked that I take the lead in sharing out the information we gathered, and then they're here to fill in any gaps and also help field any questions on this. But following the board's direction that was provided at the January Executive Committee meeting, Director Guzman, First Vice Chair Harwick, and myself met several times to not only review RTD's data on public comment volume going back to 2023 and running through 2025. We also reviewed public comment practices from across the APTA landscape and then from some Colorado entities as well. The board report in your packet, which I will share my screen now, does a good job of outlining a lot of what we found. But before I go too much into what we researched and our findings, I want to remind everybody that the direction that was provided to the chair, ostensibly by way of the board, was that any changes to the public comment structure at board meetings allow the board to hold more fulsome debates on issues. I think there were some concerns that board members weren't having enough time to fully debate issues within a meeting, and that those debates on issues of significant public importance or interest were occurring much later in the evening than intended, because the board really wanted to ensure that those conversations were occurring when public interest and public bandwidth for attending board meetings was at its highest. And so I'll start first by going down here to page 80 of the packet. Excuse me, not page 80, page 77. Nope, it is page 80. I was right. And this is just the data from the last 3 years. And so we did not go back and look and see exactly how long each public commenter took, but we assumed that each public commenter took about 3 minutes. And if you factor in the fact that there's transition time between the podium, there's transition time with getting people recognized, etc., I think that is a safe estimation. And you can see that the vast majority of the meetings, public comment is actually not a very significant portion of the meeting. There are, however, several meetings in 2025 that exceeded 1 hour and several exceeded 2 hours. And I think so there's some recency concerns with the amount of time public comment is taking up. But that data is there for your collective review. We also estimated the time that things would take if there was a lower limit set on individual speaker time limits, and you can see that data presented as well. I want to also step back here and say the goal of our conversation is to get some consensus direction today on where you would like to see some policy changes, and then I'll return to the work with Director Guzman and First Chair Harwick to bring forward some amendments, most likely to the board's operating guidelines that cement some of these changes. Then also listed out in the packet, but I'm not going to go through this, are all of the pieces of data that we gathered from other entities. But within the board report, there's some summary information here that I'll scroll back up to. Starting with other transit agencies, there's two big levers here that the working group on this think we can pull is potentially setting a max aggregate time limit for all public comment to occur within a meeting, and then potentially considering a change to the allowable time per speaker within a board meeting. You can see that smaller entities tend to have a longer time period. I included annual boardings in this information just to give you a sense of scale. Our research, at least from the places examined here, kind of shows a slight connection between larger entities and larger agencies allowing for shorter periods of individual public comment. I will note that there are several entities here that have specific time limits on their public comment sections in their meetings. The ones that did not almost universally indicated that they never contemplated setting an aggregate time limit because they're just pretty relatively small entities, and therefore it was never something that really came up as part of their meeting flow. Moving over to Denver City Council, Longmont City Council, the Denver School Board, and the University of Colorado Board of Regents, we looked at some Colorado entities that are not by any means apples to apples, but just give you a sense of what other entities in Colorado are doing. I might have selected Longmont because we have a certain director on this board that has some experience with that. And you can see similar timeframes listed here, as well as aggregate time limits. And then this final section of the board report indicates some of the practices that we are recommending you all to consider as potential changes to how public comment is structured within board meetings. And these are based off of both APTA entities and practices deployed by other Colorado governmental entities. And these are not anything that we are formally saying we need to do these. These are the ideas that we have brought forward for everyone's collective consideration. The group, looked at it and said, a lot of the streamlining of public comment could be accomplished by setting an aggregate time limit for public comment and then reducing the amount of time each individual is allotted for public comment. Some other approaches that are notable, there are entities that restrict the amount of time on public comment based off of the topic. We have some concerns about that because then at some point it becomes a judgment call, but because it was something that we researched, we figured we would put it forward for your consideration. And then there were a lot of entities that provided the chair discretion whether to extend or limit public comment based off of the volume. And then one item of note is a lot of entities have times and spaces where they allow for a public hearing on a specific topic. With RTD, we have one of those every year. We hold a public hearing on the budget. And if those of you recall the budget vote from last December, we set aside a specific time in the meeting agenda to have a public hearing on the budget. Other entities, such as Denver City Council and WMATA, will hold specific public hearings on an issue, either because they're required by law to host a hearing on that issue, just as we're required by law to host a hearing on the budget, or because it's of significant public interest. And it can be a way of consolidating and streamlining the public comment process such that instead of doing that in the midst of a board meeting, you might set up an alternative time on a particular issue of significant public concern to take the public feedback on that issue. And that can be a way of pushing that public comment to a more concentrated area and allowing more time within the confines of your board meetings for the debate of actionable items. And with that, I will conclude my remarks and see if Director Harwick or First Vice Chair Harwick or Director Guzman have anything further to add. And then I'm sure we would be happy to take any questions.
Okay, Mr. Guzman.
Just very quickly, we discussed together whether it would be wise to amend board operating guidelines or bylaws to be able to accomplish this task and what would be the appropriate response. And we also reviewed what we have currently available to us. And so as a reminder, the executive committee, which is now meeting, has the authority to administer the agenda for a board meeting under the direction of the chair. So that gives you all the control in terms of regular assessment of a board meeting to be able to set some limits on public comment without having to amend things. So some of this could just be simple advice and a toolkit that could be used for the purposes of that. The chair of the board has discretion to call special meetings at any time under our current bylaws, should they see fit. So if there was a need to receive, take special time to call a board meeting just for the purpose of having public comment on a matter, the chair could take action in that way without having to amend the bylaws. And then further to that, our operating guidelines and the description of the committee chair's responsibility and roles also indicate that the chairs of the subcommittees have the authority to manage the time and are encouraged to do so of our committee meetings to stay in line with this. And so without having to be overly prescriptive and restrictive on any individual and complicate things, that also is a thought practice that we had together in terms of what we need to do or what we would like to do and what should happen or shouldn't happen. So happy to take on more consideration and work on this, but I don't know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but we do need to understand how we operate within our guidelines and our bylaws right now. And so that's something to keep in mind if it's something that you would like us to bring back as a recommended action to change, which requires 2/3 of the board to vote in favor of it. Or if it's something that we just need to come back and say, here are the authorities that we've interpreted from the rules, and this is how we would encourage the chairs to engage as the administrator of a meeting in that sense. Clearly, there's a need for public engagement, and we don't want to get rid of that, and we want to make sure that we maintain that. And as required by law, the budget public hearing is a necessity, and so we don't want to mess around with anything that we don't need to there. We just want to make sure that we are providing the best feedback to everybody. And looking over all of this, we have a pretty robust process. There's just some little tweaks that could be made here and there that may not necessitate making changes to the bylaws if we don't need to. But if that's where everybody would like to go, I'm certainly willing to work with First Vice Chair Harwick and Jack to make sure we come back with appropriate recommendations. But from where I sit, I just wanted to make sure that that was clearly understood as part of the conversation as well. What needs to happen versus do we need to change anything right now? Or are we just, needing to redirect our energy in planning how to do this better? Thanks.
Thank you, Director Guzman. Secretary Nicholson.
Thank you. So I definitely support this effort. I think public comment's great, but I think that what the city does with a 30-minute public comment period and limiting it to the first X number of people who fit within that period and moving the people who have done it recently, much as these are often my friends at GDT, to the end of the list, is a good way to make sure that the people who are showing up for a particular thing get the opportunity to speak, and that we do not spend more than a certain amount of time, having having that happen. I think honestly, the more we encourage people to email directors in advance of the meeting, honestly, in many cases, the more say and the more impact that they will have versus just showing up and talking at us. And so I think as a broader part of this conversation, and we brought this up during the retreat, I would really like to see us move in the direction of doing what former Chair Guzman did with his committee agendas, and actually having set times. And this facilitates our ability to do that, because it gives, it would give us this is the block of time in which we are going to do this. This is the block of time in which we're going to do this. I know there was discontent last year or the year before when the board set a fixed time limit on the meetings. And I think that, if we're going to do that and say 4 hours, with the possibility to extend, we should be willing to do the same thing with individual agenda items, and, not allow ourselves to slip and slip and slip, because, we don't want to put a hard cap on something we do every month.
Thank you, Secretary Nicholson. Director Gutierrez is here with his hand raised.
I am here, yeah. And thank you very much, Director Guzman and Vice Chair Harwick, for the work. For what it's worth, I'm supportive in putting some sort of cap on public comment. And, maybe we start on the side of more generous, hour and a half, 2 hours. I think having some sort of cap would be beneficial, because I've been in some of these meetings where I feel like if it's not gone 3 hours, it's felt like it. And I think we've gotten pretty close to that. So, and I just think that takes, it can take away from the productiveness of the rest of the meeting. And public comment is very valuable. Wouldn't be opposed to us maybe looking at shortening like individuals to 2.5 minutes, or potentially 2. I could go either way on that, but do have energy behind trying to put some sort of time limit on the overall public comment period. Thank you.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair. Is there anybody else that has comments, questions, clarifications? Yeah,
Mr. Chair, if I may.
yeah, please.
On page 80 of the packet, and I want to direct all of your attention there, is an aggregate view of time spent during our meetings. And it's really important, and I'm not trying to pick back on what Vice Chair Gutschenritter just said, but I really do want to make sure that I point this out. It can seem long sitting in the seats. They're very uncomfortable listening to public comment, but we've never gotten anywhere near 3 hours. And so it just feels like it. And I want to make sure that that is clearly understood, because there is a risk of limiting the public's participation in this that we need to be very cognizant of. Now, I'm not saying I disagree on limiting times, but how would you like us to limit those times? Is it a max aggregate amount? Like we will only hear comment for 1 hour at the most? Or the other option that we came to was, do you want to limit it to 2 minutes per speaker? Right now we give 3. And while I'm here, I'm going to throw this out for you all to chew on and consider. I have experienced during public comment on my time on the board, when a previous director, somebody who's not on the board any longer, a former director, comes to speak to us, or if an elected official outside of the agency comes to speak to us, that there is a little bit of gravitas that the chair may expend there. but there's also been sometimes a demand for additional time to speak, and that just takes up more time, right? And so what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's public comment, which should be equal for everybody if we believe in that tenet of our Constitution, equality under the law. Um, does that transfer over here? And so that's why I'm asking, right? If it's 2 minutes per person, it's 2 minutes for every person, unless the chair deems it would be necessary otherwise in a committee or in the board meeting. Those things are things that we have looked at and considered, and I would just like to make sure that I understand what you're asking us to provide you back with very fine clarity so that we know what work to do. And while I'm not opposed to bringing back, a time limitation in any way, what are you asking us to do then? Because it could be 2 minutes per person and go on forever, or it can be, we're going to allow 1 hour of public commentary and then move to our business. Also, the concern that I brought up with Director Harwick and Mr. Kroll, that we have work to do on our busy meeting nights, and we have to be able to functionally do that work. And so if it's eaten into by an overrun on time management, it puts us at peril of not being able to get our work done as well when we're all in the room and able to vote. So thank you. I would
Secretary
appreciate the clarification on that, just so I understand what the rest of that thought is. Thanks.
Secretary Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you. I will say that, one of the things logistically that I do think is important is being flexible when it comes to especially other elected officials that come to speak. And the state legislature does this, where, if you are the mayor of X, or, Lone Tree, or if you are a state senator, they will let you go at the beginning of the meeting simply because of the schedule that you are on. If Mike Johnston wants to come speak to us, I don't think it's a good thing for us to say, oh yeah, you can speak sometime in the middle of the meeting and you get 30 seconds, you get 2 minutes to do it. So I think there is some, there is a reasonable understanding that needs to sort of take place there. And I agree with Michael that for a lot of this stuff, it's better to just let the chair make those calls rather than being incredibly prescriptive. That being said, one of the reasons for having a policy of, no more than 30 minutes and no more than 2 minutes per person written down is because a lot of chairs don't want to be the bad guy, and they don't want to be the one having to say, oh yeah, I'm going to cut you off. Why? Well, it's just my discretion. So I can understand the value of writing this down just to save whoever it is in that seat the uncomfortableness of having to just, do it by fiat. But I do think that, there are going to be a lot of circumstances in which we do want to treat certain people differently.
Thank you. For my part, I would add, I think that, public comment is important, but it's not more important than the decisions we make. In fact, there's loads of mechanisms for constituents, stakeholders to share input, the public to share input with us. There's only one way to take action, and that's through a board vote. And so I have gotten very concerned that we're doing perhaps our most important items after everybody else is turned off, and that is a really difficult situation with kind of sunshine on action. So I'm happy to be the person who arbitrarily limits it, but I think having the expectation on a window up front helps people understand that they're going to get a chance if they get there early. If they've not commented the last 5 meetings in a row, they're going to have an opportunity, and this is how you have to do it, versus we get 30 people and we're just deciding that would be too long. So I like the window so people can plan their life around it, and also people that do not want to listen to other members of the public speaking, they know when to show up for the actual substantive business of the board. And so that's one of the other benefits. I think right now I guess you'd have to log on and look, or turn it off and come back and check on it. So that would be my 2 cents. Okay, Mr. Kroll, we're making the topic on keeping our meetings efficient, the longest item. So this is going to be the end of the discussion. Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly note, you hit on a topic related to the formats that you allow public comment. Our research indicated that RTD, relative to the entities examined, has the most expansive options for providing public comment. And I just wanted the record to reflect that.
Okay, well, that's good. Good on us for doing that, and hopefully we can preserve it. Okay, so I'm going to move us on. This is proactive disclosure of director expenses. The next item, ask Secretary Nicholson and Executive Manager Kroll to brief this item.
So Chair O'Keefe, I spoke with Secretary Nicholson yesterday, and he's going to take the lead on this, and I'll fill in any gaps.
Your floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the idea behind this policy change is really very simple. We all are spending the taxpayers' money, and we're doing it at a time when we all recognize that there is a fiscal crunch. The reports of our spending are available in different ways digitally right now, either by requesting them through a Quora, which you can do, or by going into, and I'm not going to remember the name of this document precisely, Mr. Kroll, but the register, the large CSV file that is posted as part of the board briefing documents that has in small parts of it, details on specific expenses. Neither of those are terribly friendly ways for the average member of the public to understand what we're spending their tax money on. And I think that, especially as we have started to do more public events, and last year have, spent a significant amount of money on a number of these events, I just think if our goal is to increase trust in the agency, this is a very straightforward way to put that information out there, to do it routinely, so that it's not seen as, oh my God, this is information that, it's us basically saying, here it is, we're doing it all the time, go look at it, it's routine, and to be as transparent as possible. So I think we don't have anything to hide. There's nothing. I've seen all of the disclosure reports for the last God knows number of years, and there's nothing crazy in them. If somebody does decide to do something crazy, great, it'll be that much more visible. But I think we are better off being open with the public versus not being open with the public.
Chair O'Keefe, the only thing I have to add is that the board office has thought nimbly and has a very streamlined approach to getting these posted if you all wanted to go in that direction. And our recommendation would be to post them on a quarterly deadline or on a quarterly cadence in alignment with your quarterly expense submission deadlines. And we would have some lag there to account for the fact that the deadline needs to be met and then the expenses and reimbursements processed. But we would align on a quarterly basis to post that information, and we would likely post it to the board briefing page, since that's an area where many people go already to gather information about RTD and the board.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments, questions? We'll go with Treasurer Banker.
Hey, a quick question for Jack. If somebody wanted the information, could they just ask the board office for it, not do a Quora?
Chair O'Keefe, if I may. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Treasurer Banker. We typically would allow someone to ask us directly, but the way we would handle it on the back end is we would log it as a Quora request anyways, because that's our way of tracking those things, and then ensuring that the disclosure is made. And we have received, this is hidden in the board report, we have received on average one request annually from going back to 2019 for all director expenses. So it's typically something that we end up disclosing anyways on an annual basis.
Okay, so if somebody wants the information, it's readily available. They just have to ask.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Second Vice Chair Guttschmider.
Thank you. And I might have missed this. You might have covered it, Jack, or Mr. Kroll. If we were to do this, which route, this option or not publishing it proactively, would put more work on your team? And what is the amount of additional work?
Mr. Kroll?
Estimate.
Yeah, we compile these reports anyways, and we maintain them internally. It would just be a coordinated effort with us and the team that maintains the board briefing documents website to post these. I think the bigger issue would potentially be if a director had not complied with the expense reimbursement deadline. We would need to be empowered to say, okay, we haven't gotten yours yet, but we're going to post everybody else's. I think that would be the bigger issue. The core request process involves other folks from across the agency, notably in the general counsel's department. I can't speak to how much they put into these types of requests, but I would say that those requests tend to be more involved, although less frequent than obviously a quarterly posting in perpetuity.
So if you had to answer that in one sentence, collectively then, not just for your board office team, but also, I guess, legal, I mean, which option is going to put more work and time on the agency?
Mr. Kroll?
Assuming we only received one request per year moving forward, the proactive disclosure would likely lead to more aggregate work. But at any time, people could request this, and that's impossible to predict how often or how regularly they might request it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, if you have anything else occurs to you, Mr. Kroll or Ms. Secretary Nicholson, I know would welcome any input. Fourth and final discussion item is Executive Committee Work Plan. Executive Manager Kroll, can you please brief this item?
Chair O'Keefe, I will keep this very short and sweet. We reviewed the work plan at the retreat on February 7th. There have been no major changes to the work plan since that time. The work plan was included in the packet and posted to the board's collaboration tool pilot. And this is the time, if there are other topics not currently listed on the work plan, for those to be raised and potentially included in the work plan. While you all will approve the work plan at your March meeting, it will remain an evergreen document subject to revisions at the discretion of the chair in consultation with the first vice chair and the primary staff liaisons for this committee.
Thank you. Any questions about that? Once, twice. Okay. So we'll close out discussion items. Other matters. Anybody have any topics for other matters? I have two. Okay, no other takers. Okay, so two entirely different topics. One, I had a meeting with ADAPT leadership today, both Colorado and national, and I have promised to engage with them regularly. I'll probably meet with them every other month, although our next meeting is going to be 30 days off. I've got a list of questions that I need to organize and then send to staff to help pull it together. I did want to note there are a couple of things that really jumped out. The drop off in people registered for AOD has been pretty significant. They have raised some issues with making sure you're appropriately enrolled for the program. And also one other stat that jumped out at me is the LIVE program. So we had 14,500 people registered for Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand. Of those, only 1,200 are qualified for LIV program, and that does not seem to be consistent with what you would expect to see in that population. They said that, and this is not scientific counting, but 80% of survey respondents about those programs were in the LIV program, but we're only registering, under 10% of people in the Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand, or Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand programs. Only 1,200 seems low, so I think we've got a bit of a disconnect in people's opportunity to take advantage of the LIV program. Secretary Nicholson, let me just throw one other thing because you may have a comment on this one too. So the second item is related to the FRPR briefing that we will get next week. I think we all know they are planning to go to the ballot and ask for some taxing allocation from potential stakeholder regions for the FRPR. They are not currently funded. There has been a discussion that has gone, nothing official, but around for the last several months, as to whether we would provide money to support technically help them get ready for a ballot question out of our FISA account. And there are two universes, one where we are reimbursed if the tax passes. The other one is if the tax doesn't pass, there's no other way to recoup it. So I'm going to work with our friends at FRPR, and I will work with GM CEO Johnson to see if we can come up with a plan. But I wanted to flag this as an item for discussion. For us to help them meaningfully, we would have to probably take action in March on this, so a fairly expedited action. And so that is something that will likely come up next week. I wanted to flag it. It's something that I tend to be supportive of, especially if we can get credit as out of the FISA account as helping with FRPR. Secretary Nicholson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take those in reverse order. First off, really glad you're working on that with FRPR, having been involved in a great number of these sorts of, questions around how to raise funds. It takes money to make money, so to speak. And if you don't have the funding to go to the ballot and to do the kind of public awareness in advance of going to the ballot, you won't pass your ballot measure. And so if we are committed to being a part of Front Range Passenger Rail, we are in for a penny and in for a pound. And we have to help make that a success if we want it to be a success. So I fully support that. The second thing, I would just highlight that those numbers about the LIV program are not just true for Access-a-Ride riders. We have a dramatically smaller percentage of enrolled LIV program users compared to the amount of individuals based on our rider surveys who qualify for the LIV program. So I think it is worth highlighting that there may be something about how we administer the LIV program that makes it too difficult for individuals who qualify for that discount to actually get that discount. And that you all know this, one of the things that I'm very intent upon doing is seeing that change, whether that's as a result of state legislation or action that we take to make sure that if you're qualified for the discount, you're not drowning in paperwork to prevent you from getting the $50 off, and that we are making sure that the people who are qualified actually are enrolling and getting it. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. One thing that was raised today, this is anecdotal. I don't know all the details behind it, but that because Medicaid is a mechanism to certify for the LIV program, people are very hesitant to touch anything with Medicaid because they do not want to lose that access to that program. And so it's a very touchy website. And they said, sometimes if you check a box somewhere else, it can have knock-on effects through your entire Medicaid benefits. So that's something that did come up. Treasurer Baker.
Just real quick, the numbers that you talked about with regard to the LIVE program, I do find a bit disturbing. Is there do you know if there's anything our staff can do to try to reach out to this population and try to help them sign up for the discount and help them get through the new paperwork requirement? I would like to see those numbers go up substantially. So what can we do to help?
So I'm gonna translate some questions into item with staff. We can distribute it to everybody if you're interested. To start to try to figure out what we can do to help solve the issue rather than just
Yeah.
issue a complaint to staff and what we haven't chased the issue enough to even offer a solution to the underlying problem. So I am on that. That is part of my promise to them that we'll see if we can make a suggestion and then determine if it's workable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the support. Okay, I'm gonna move us forward. No other matters. Other matters. As a reminder, our next regularly scheduled executive committee meeting is Thursday, March 19th. It's gonna be a busy one. At that meeting, we're scheduled to vote on our committee work plan, take follow-up actions on several items discussed today. We also have a discussion on our web content accessibility guidelines policy. Here are our monthly government relations report. We'll have conversation from January regarding public polling. We also may discuss bylaw amendments related to the board office, executive manager position, as well as ideas proposed by directors Chandler and Banker based on their ongoing work on the bylaws. I'm also anticipating a special executive committee meeting as soon as we get to the first week of March to consider our position on the RTD Accountability Committee legislation. So we have promised Senator Ball that we'll move quicker than our calendar. If we go on a regular calendar, obviously we wouldn't get feedback out until session is over. So we're going to be a little bit agile in our scheduling to try to accept his offer of giving our opinion. Entertain a motion to adjourn. I'm going to move. We're going to adjourn. Okay, the meeting is adjourned as of 1:15. For those joining the Performance Committee meeting, the goal is to commence that in about 10 minutes. So take some free time. We'll be back on shortly.
And just as a reminder to folks, that meeting will occur in this Zoom room. So I think I know 1:15, so maybe 1:25. Does that work, Chair Guchenritter? Okay, I see the thumbs up.
Yes,
Alrighty.
thank you.
And as a reminder, while we are stopping the recording, there is some chance we are still live streaming to YouTube, but the recording has been stopped and we will restart the recording once we commence the Performance Committee meeting.
Okay, it is 1:25. Does it look like we have most folks? Yes, it does. Are we ready to start the recording? Okay, the Thursday, February 19th Performance Committee will now come to order. We are convened as of 1:25 p.m. I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. Please note that committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practical on the board's website. During today's meeting, we are providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated for anyone who would like access to a live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. A live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. I would now like to call the roll for the committee members. Director Chandler.
Present.
Director Geisinger.
Present.
Director Guzman. Not present. Director Nicholson.
Present.
Chair O'Keefe.
Present.
And I am also present. Let's see, for the record, I see we also have, I think that's it, from the directors. Director Larson, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, you didn't call me out for being present or not, but I am present.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I would like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press #9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Do we have any hands raised or for public comments?
Committee Chair Gucci Ramirez, Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. At this time, there are no hands raised, and there were also no emailed comments submitted in advance. And then one final note on a related topic, Director Guzman, he rebooted his computer and will be here as quickly as he can, but he is intending to join as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. We will close the public comment period at this time. There is one recommended action on the agenda this afternoon, and that item is for the Successor Strategic Plan Consultancy for the Board of Directors to authorize the General Manager and CEO or her designee to enter into a contract with Insight Strategies for the development of the agency's Successor Strategic Plan for 2026 through 2031. Planning horizon for a total not to exceed amount of $149,000. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I heard Chair O'Keefe as the mover and Director Chandler as the second. I would like to ask GM CEO Johnson and John McKay, Chief of Staff, to present this item to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As introduced, Deborah Johnson, General Manager and CEO. As many of you may recall, I provided an update relative to a timeline in relationship to the strategic plan successor at your February 7th board retreat. And so I'd like to take this opportunity just to ground everybody in the context and purpose of the successor strategic plan. As you may be aware from reading the board report, that the current strategic plan sunsets this year, and it has provided a guidable, measurable improvements across our community, customer, employee, and financial metrics. And keeping in mind that the progress that has been made, the intent here is to build on these successes. The board and the leadership team have the opportunity to seize the moment and chart RTD's direction for the next 5 years. I know oftentimes we've gotten the question, why would we leverage a consultancy? And keeping in mind that having a qualified firm to lead the development of the successor plan will ensure alignment of vision, mission, and values with actionable goals. Moreover, there requires engagement of the board, leadership, and stakeholders in the public, considering that this is our guiding document. And we want to continue leveraging that just by virtue of the conversations I've had with this committee. And then more so, it's the integration of industry best practices and performance measures. As a gentle reminder, the scope highlights include discovery. That's really integral to the process, which I spoke about previously when we convened at the board retreat. The consultant will review agency documents, performance data, organizational documents relative to aspects of what we have done with various plans guided by our organizational redesign and workplace assessment, for instance. More to the point, other elements that we have taken into consideration, leveraging our tactical plan that we have in improving customer experience and things of the like. There'll be engagement that includes but not limited to one-on-one board interviews, leadership workshops, stakeholder and public sessions with inclusive practices for language and accessibility. It'll entail alignment around defining success outcomes, long-term goals and tactics, a performance scorecard, and more to the point, having a retreat where we can ensure that there is direction and support and alignment with the board of directors and the leadership team. And then a final deliverable will be a comprehensive strategic plan, including board-derived goals and milestones. As it relates to the timelines, should the board approve this, or I should say, should the executive committee approve this recommended action today, and then subsequently the board during the meeting on Tuesday, February 24th, staff would issue a notice to proceed as soon as practicable following said board meeting, and work will proceed following, contract negotiations with the key milestones scheduled in the following months. We would hope to ensure that listening sessions with the board and leadership stakeholders in the public would take place in March. In April, board and leadership team retreat. May, a draft development of a plan, leveraging feedback, and then in June, a board discussion item. And then no later than August 9th, board approval. And we say no later than August 9th, just due to the fact that the previous board did adopt the strategic plan November 8th. But there is flexibility quite naturally with you all as the governing body. You could alter that and decide to continue with the current strategic plan until we had a sufficient plan that everybody could rally around. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will yield the floor to you for any further information or details you'd like to provide. Thank you.
Thank you, GM CEO Johnson. And for the record, I would like to state that Director Guzman has joined. I don't have anything to add, but thank you for that. I see Director Geisinger has her hand raised.
Thanks. I thought that there was a statute that came out of the legislature in the last year or so that required us to do a 10-year plan. Did that not pass, or is that not the case?
GM CEO Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Director Geisinger, you are correct, but this is the strategic plan, not a 10-year planning document. That's a long-range plan. They're two different elements. We will be circling back in a communication that I provided to the board. We talk about where we are, and we will more clearly outline that relative to where we sit.
So would we be using this strategic plan for the first 5 years and then doing something longer? Or What's the thought on that?
So this is a strategic plan in reference to guiding us relative to where we aspire to be with vision, mission, values, addressing the who, the what, the why, and the how. That 10-year plan is more geared toward what is our planning aspects in reference to our core operation relative to service delivery. Of course, there's going to be some overlay, but as it's qualified in the plan, in legislation, it's not a strategic plan. It's a 10-year plan, more in alignment with what CDOT has done. And Mr. McKay is coming on. Are you throwing me a lifeline?
Thank you. You were saying the exact same thing I was going through.
Oh, okay.
On CDOT's website, they do publish a 10-year strategic plan that it talks about capital improvements and projects of that nature. So this is more an internal facing document that we use to develop our internal goals for the next 5 years.
So the CDOT 10-year plan lists all the projects that they're planning to do in the next 10 years and when they're going to be funded and things like that. Are we looking at that, capital projects? And
if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please, GM CEO Johnson.
Yes, Director Geisinger, we're going to start the framework for that going forward. We will have staff be bringing, I'm talking off the top of my head. I prefer not to do that, but in due time, I would say it'll come forward. There is a sunset date. We're going to apprise where we are as we move forward with adhering to those legislative requirements.
Great. One more quick question, if I may. What's the timing with respect to the COA? Will we be starting the same time as this?
So recognizing that that is an active procurement, what I will say that it could be. I want to adhere to our procurement practices. So I am being a little tongue in cheek because I don't want us to be in procurement jail, but we have a window and I believe we'll hear something this quarter.
I don't want you to be in procurement jail. So thank you.
Thank you. And I jumped the gun a little bit by calling on Director Geisinger. I should have said at this time, I would ask those directors who have questions or who wish to raise your virtual hands, and I will call on you in turn for directors or staff calling into the meeting. If you wish to speak, please press *9. Director Geisinger, your hand is still up. Do you have a question? Your hand is down. Director Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And apologies, my computer decided to restart during the break, so I joined a few moments late. With respect to the cost of this, I just want to make sure, and it's clearly stated here, that this falls within the amount that's been allotted, but I want to make sure that we're not under planning, right? This is a major undertaking for the agency, and a strategic plan is nothing to scoff at. If we're going to invest money somewhere, that would be where I would look to invest it, because that's going to have it'll be the culmination of the work and the expectation I think the board has clearly said needs to happen going forward. So we're certain that this falls squarely within the amount. I mean, typical that it would be around 150. And not too much more than that. But for an agency our size, my concern is that enough? And do we need to be concerned anywhere that we'll be getting an additional ask later? Thank you.
GM CEO Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Guzman, for the question. Recognizing the steps that were taken to put forward this solicitation of the independent cost estimate and the diligence that was done and the proposals that were received. Keeping in mind that this basically is we're seeking action to ensure that we can enter into a contract. If there were any negotiation aspect of that, that's been taken into consideration. There is a not to exceed amount of $149,000. And by virtue of what we anticipate doing, having somebody facilitate discussions, garner information, leverage that to help us work collectively, I am confident that this is sufficient amount of money, keeping in mind that the agency has done this before, and now we have things in place of which we did not have previously. I am confident, or I would not be bringing this forward asking for this to be a recommended action. Thank you.
If I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm happy to approve this and move it forward. I would urge the fellow directors on this committee to do the same. I want to state here, I know that there is concern about what the future holds for the agency, but we are the seat of directors and we need to make these decisions. And I am reluctant to wait to get any of this done, regardless of external factors, because this is the work of the board. And if we move this forward, I would like to see this work done and the collaboration and cooperation of the board the entire way through to its end during our time on the board, since we are making this decision and work has been put into it in previous years to get to this point. So I just urge a yes vote on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Guzman. Anyone else? Thank you, Director Chandler.
Thank you, Chair Gutenritter. I was just having a question. So back to Director Geisinger's questions. There's actually then three kind of reports that we're in the process of doing. The first one, of course, is the COA, which is in procurement stage. The other two are the 5-year and the 10-year. Is that correct? Am I getting this all together? And then the vote obviously is on the 5-year plan. Is that kind of summarizing what we're doing? I just want to make sure I'm clear on what we're asking.
Correct. We are voting on the 5-year plan, the strategic 5-year plan, but GM CEO Johnson, please.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you very much, Chair Gutenritter. So this is a strategic plan. The comprehensive operational analysis is not a plan per se. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to ground everybody in what we're talking about, because I think there's confusion as relates to what a COA actually is. And then thirdly, with the 10-year plan that was incorporated into statute, that is getting back to the aspect of what are we doing to ensure that we are being a sustainable organization by virtue of having plans on a long range horizon, ensuring that we have our assets. So there are going to be other inputs that yield the output quite naturally in developing a 10-year plan, because here at this agency, we do have an asset management plan, a transit asset management plan, and utilizing those mechanisms going forward. So that's why I just wanted to take the opportunity to sort of differentiate between the three. Are they interchangeable? Not really. Are they codependent? Yes, they can be, as we talk about where we like to be in the long range. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Chandler, for the clarifying question.
Yes, thank you. Are there any no votes on this action? Okay, unanimous aye votes. I'll consider that. So no votes, and that motion passes. We have one discussion item on the agenda for the 2026 Performance Committee Work Plan. I would like to ask GM CEO Johnson to present this item to the committee.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I will yield the floor to you once I go through this, keeping in mind that this is something that's collective of the board. And I know there were discussions as well at the February 7th board retreat. So recognizing what we have before us in March, seeking to have the committee work plan adopted by this body. We have listed out a discussion item which takes into consideration quarterly key organizational performance metrics, a deep dive. Having had the opportunity to meet with the chair of the committee and the vice chair of the committee, we were speaking about looking at metrics associated with the various aspects of our core business, being the people power in reference to doing the core work of the agency. Also listed here is a quarterly general manager CEO performance discussion, which you all know I had incorporated into my 9th contract amendment, whereby it'll give us an opportunity for me to talk about progress and what we're progress toward the goals that this body has approved as a collective, the entire board, and provide other information as germane relative to the overarching performance. Looking at the April meeting, I do want to note that that date says subject to change. Wanted to bring that forward to all of you because I'd be remiss to state that I would be out of the office that day. And and some elements here are reflective of me, i.e. check-in on the 2026 GMCEO performance appraisal and things of the like. So the board office will be checking with the committee, because I believe the chair and vice chair, they are both aware of that and agreed that we could poll, and I see a head nod. So as we move forward to May, there is a committee discussion item review of GMCEO performance assessment tool. That would be in reference to the current 2026 performance appraisal for the position in which I hold. Moving forward to June, I do see a date here saying subject to change as well. We would be looking at survey results relative to community bus, rail, and paratransit results. And then quite naturally, it's highlighted here. It says 2027 GM short-term goals as warranted. That's a call out, recognizing in the previous meeting, the chair did recognize that conversations are ensuing as my contract sunsets in May. So there could or could not be a need to have those short-term goals for me, being Deborah Johnson, sitting in the position. Additionally, we would be discussing the strategic plan relative to having a notice to proceed with the consultancy that we put forward relative to the action you just took. Some of this could be adjusted somewhat once we have an understanding of where we are as a collective. Moving forward, and also, I'm sorry, in June as well, quarterly check-in for GMCEO performance. Looking at July, elements are here relative to the strategic plan. Need to be flexible and agile with that, considering the work that needs to be done. Additionally, we'd have a quarterly key organizational performance metrics deep dive. And I believe, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'll state that it's our intent to have those discussions at the meeting about what we would be bringing forward relative to the area in which we would be doing a deep dive on. Also listed here is the GMCEO total compensation analysis, a peer group, and a survey review. For those that may not recall, that's embedded into the contract relative to the path forward, and also the compensation philosophy that was adopted about 2 years ago. September, we have another quarterly check-in for my performance in the September timeframe, then a check-in on the 2026 GMCEO performance appraisal, and then discussion relative to strategic initiatives going into 2026, 2027. That's to apprise this committee should those change as we move forward. I believe there's a clear-cut nexus with the strategic plan, successor coming to fruition, or leveraging the inputs that we have relative to the current strategic initiatives, and where we sit with continuity moving forward to ensure that those still stand strong relative to the organization's performance. Looking at October, a discussion item relative to total compensation analysis and presentation of the final results that would have come full circle in the July meeting, and that would be presented in October if this timeline holds in place. A review of a draft assessment form to be completed by directors. That draft assessment is basically tied to the performance of the position in which I hold, and then another quarterly deep dive in reference to the metrics. Going forward to November, a conversation relative to the self-assessment that I would put forward, and a performance appraisal conversation that would be done in an executive session. And then contingent on timelines, quite naturally, the performance appraisal for 2026. And then it moves into January, whereby a committee chair and vice chair election, and potentially a quarterly organizational performance deep dive. I will say that's to be determined quite naturally as we move forward in recognizing what shakes out from strategic planning and other elements that are crucial to having that come forward as a discussion. So I will yield the floor at this juncture, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, GMC Johnson. And before I turn it over to any further discussion, I just want to add that look at asking this group this committee for some grace and flexibility. This year in 26, we are doing everything we did in 25, but on top of that, there's the 5-year strategic plan. There's contract negotiation discussions, and so there's a lot. And these timelines could, may be tight. They may change over the course of the year. It might not be perfect in your mind. If it's not, I want to hear about it, and we can have a discussion. But ultimately, just asking for some grace and flexibility from this group. And then just also want to remind the group that if you have performance related questions, you want to talk about metrics, it doesn't always have to occur in the performance committee meeting. If you've got questions, feel free to speak up and take advantage of the other matters section of the monthly general board meeting. So just wanted to say that. Is there any further discussion from the committee? Director Guzman.
Well, you betcha. Thank you so much. So a couple of questions that I have regarding the weight of this work plan. We traditionally meet once a month for about an hour, and some of these months are packed full of information that's going to take more than an hour to get through. So does it make sense to adjust our plan to include additional meetings so we can cover this properly? And this is what I'm thinking. If I look at specifically the June meeting, let's just look at June. You've got the strategic plan that's going to take some time to discuss. Any conversation around short-term goals will take time to discuss. But the survey results for bus, rail, and paratransit takes a while to get through. And any other time where we have both a check-in and so a one-on-one check-in with the general manager CEO, where typically we go into an executive session, but we also have other conversation about, quarterly performance deep dive, such as in, let's see, March. Those are hard to balance. I mean, it's literally 30 minutes to get through something that could take us 2 hours and then no time to deal with the other, whatever it is, right? And so I know we've kind of talked around this, but I think that those are two heavy discussions that should happen either at two different meetings, or we should allot the amount of time necessary to do it properly now with expectations going forward for the year. So that's one question. I'll set that to the side. That's an issue for, I believe, you and the general manager to discuss and get back to us. But I don't think that it's wise to set that on the same meeting in the same month. It's too much information to cover and not enough time to actually do anything with the information that we would get. The second one, with respect to the total compensation research, I notice our new chief people officer, Ms. Tran, is on the call, and I'm not sure if this goes to her or if you have an idea at this point, but typically that work is done with the chief people officer and the team to research the total compensation, or it can be outsourced in a year where we are looking at tight resources. I am curious about what the plan is for that particular set of research to get the right numbers back in here, so that we can move forward with an understanding of where we're at. And I know in the past we have not been far off when we have done both internal and external research. I think the last time it was within 0.001% of the compensation decisions that were outlaid to the board at the end of that research process. Internally to the external advice we were given, it was practically the same. And so I want to make sure that we're not wasting any time, money, or resources on anything if we have the competency within the agency to be able to do that. And I have failed, unfortunately, at this point to meet with our chief people officer, but I am certain that they would not hold that position if they didn't have that ability. And so I'd like to get an answer on that question. Are we going internally or externally? And do we feel we have the capacity to do that on time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Guzman. I'll provide my answers, and then happy to turn it over to GMCEO Johnson or Chief People Officer Tran, if you'd have anything to correct or that you'd want to add. I'll answer the first question first. I don't think anything's been finalized in terms of the compensation analysis, who's going to do that, internal or external. That's been a topic I've broached with Chief People Officer Tran already, and she's indicated that she has the competency and skills and capability to do that. And I can tell you, as chair of this committee, I am strongly leaning towards the route of keeping it internal, knowing that we have a capable team and leader that can do that work. And as you said, kind of based on past results, we were very, very, very close to what the external agency already or what they found. Now, again, nothing's been finalized, and as we get closer to that decision and time of when we have to have something finalized or recommended, I will make it my responsibility to circle back with the committee and share that recommendation and have that discussion. So I'll pause there and then I'll answer your other question. But Chief People Officer Tran or GMCEO Johnson, anything you'd like to add on that topic?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may, please.
I believe you covered that fully. And as you know, I try to, I walk that line. You've had the conversation with Chief People Officer Tran, and I would amplify. She is highly credentialed, has a wonderful portfolio, and you know, in certain instances when we had leveraged other consultants, we've had internal staff that had greater credentials and that had to lend a hand. So, but I will yield the floor to Chief People Officer Tran for opportunity for her to speak.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. For some reason, my camera says it doesn't want to work. And so I'm happy to at least provide my verbal response. As GM CEO Johnson and also Chair Guchenritter have indicated, I have many years of experience doing this, over 30 years. And so I'm happy to provide that resource and that expertise should the committee ask me to do so.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Well, I was going to circle back to your first question, but if this is still on the second question, was that Director Guzman that just...
Yes, sorry.
Please go ahead.
I just want to make it very clear. I'm not asking that question because I do not believe in the capacity or capability or abilities of our people. I am stating the question because I want to make sure that everybody understands. We have super capable people and excellent employees at the agency that are able to do this work. And in a time where we are looking at needing to be really strong stewards of financial expenditures, that's the purpose for bringing that up. So thank you, Chief Officer Tran and General Manager Johnson for addressing that question. I know it's a little clumsy and it feels awkward, but I really do appreciate it and I stand behind your professionalism. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Guzman. And I, of course, knew where your heart was coming from with that question, so did not think you were leaning towards the external agency option. And then Director Guzman, to your first question around should we go ahead and schedule additional times kind of for those packed months, I'm going to say my recommendation would be no at this time, but noted on that's probably something that we should consider. And I'm saying no just because, one, I will do my darndest to efficiently keep us on time and effectively moving through the flow of these meetings, especially where we have a packed meeting. And then two, you know, I don't want to be in a place where we're a week out and realize we can't get it all in, and then we've got to scramble to schedule a meeting. So I will do my best to avoid that. But I think I'd like to get a little closer to those meetings, whether that's 1 month or 2 months out, to determine if there's flexibility to move something to another month or get a better understanding of kind of what the content and documentation behind certain agenda items look like before deciding to break it out into 2 meetings. So very valid point, and thanks for pointing that out. And I'll take that into account and be proactive in not letting it get to the last minute before trying to schedule multiple performance meetings in a month. So that is my promise to you, and thank you again for the question. Director Larson, I see you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, kind of related to Director Guzman's comment about meeting time. Personally, if we were going to have longer meetings, it would certainly be a lot better from my perspective to not have them on Monday mornings first thing, since I do have a regular job, and that's kind of one of the worst times to have these meetings. So I know that Chair Guchenritter, you've looked into, I think, possibly doing this at other times, and I don't know where that's at, but I just wanted to make my statement about that again.
Thank you, Director Larson. I have heard you loud and clear on that point, duly noted. And I'm hopefully, that we've had the performance meeting on Thursday after executive committee a couple times now. Hopefully that's worked well for you. In terms of actually moving the normally scheduled Monday morning performance meeting to a different time, that it's not going to happen, at least in 26. If we, for the most part, I think we're kind of time capped on a lot of people, including GMC Johnson, normally have a hard stop Monday mornings. And so kind of back to Director Guzman's question, if it's so packed that we can't effectively and efficiently move through those topics, in 2 hours or whatever that time limit is, I'll try to give dual notice, and we'll poll for meeting times that second meeting might, when would that be best for the rest of this performance committee? So I don't, unless GM Johnson or anyone else has anything to add on that point, I'll go to Director Chandler. Director Chandler, please.
Thank you, Chair Gutenritter. And to that point, to Director Larson's point, Director Baker and I are combing through the bylaws. And if I remember right, it's actually prescribed in the bylaws as to when this committee is meeting. And so we are in the process of giving more flexibility within the bylaws to change some of the meetings to accommodate the necessity of scheduling, because I know some directors have chosen to be on specific committees based on schedule, but would like to maybe move to a different committee just because of that, and they can't. So that is something that we are looking into to make sure that the structure within the bylaws allows for that flexibility so that the committee itself can determine its time frame. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that is something that we are looking into.
Thank you, Director Chandler, for that comment and for the great work that you're doing looking at the bylaws. Much appreciated. Is there any further discussion from the committee on this topic? Okay, moving to other matters. Are there any other matters to discuss? Okay, next meeting date is March 2nd, 2026. As a reminder, at that meeting, we will vote on our 2026 committee work plan. Additionally, we will hold one of our quarterly key organizational performance metrics deep dives, and we are set to engage with GM CEO Johnson in executive session for a quarterly performance management check-in. Seeing no other discussion, the meeting is adjourned at 2:04 p.m.